All right, let's go. Owen, nice to meet you. Welcome on the podcast. We've got, we've got Hitesh is here as well with us. Hitesh, if you want to introduce yourself and then we'll go around.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Hitesh. I am one of the co-founders of Jointflows and the CRO. I had the pleasure of meeting Mick when we both worked at a MarTech company together, and here we are doing our own wonderful project as well.
Owen, do you want to give a little bit of information about yourself and Air Marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. Owen Richards, I'm the founder and CEO of Air Marketing. Best known for outsourced SDR, got a team about 100 people, but run an SDR academy, SDR recruitment and demand gen services as well. So a mixture of things to try and help organizations grow revenue pipeline and their brand, I suppose.
Awesome. So let's go straight in. What's your take on the current sales and revenue landscape? There's been a lot of things happening over the last few years. What's your opinion about it?
Oh, you've opened up a can of worms right at the beginning. Look, we're definitely, and I think we have a really interesting view because we sell for about 40 or 50 organizations. So, across different markets. So I think we've got quite a nice balanced view on what's happening. The reality is that there are people out there that will say everything's doom and gloom at the moment. It's not. And there are people out there that will pretend that nothing has changed, and it has. And the things that I see, and I tend to look at this stuff and try to answer the question using data rather than sort of gut feel. The data across what we're doing, which is really all I can go off of, is that sales cycles are absolutely lengthening. So it's taking longer for people to make decisions. There are more people bailing out of deals in the latter stages. And the primary or most common reason for that is a new stakeholder gets involved. So what we're seeing is just like, we've had a lot of narrative around this, finance get involved, CEOs coming in to decisions that they otherwise wouldn't have done 12 months ago, 2 years ago, and vetoing it, blocking it, delaying it. And we've got more and more scrutiny in the sales process. That doesn't mean people aren't buying. They absolutely are. They're just buying with a more considered mindset, which takes longer, and you've got more hard work to do in sales to get that deal over the line. You've got to be more commercially minded. You've got to be better at dealing with finance, better at dealing with procurement. You've got to have a bit of legal in you as well. There's all that sort of stuff. So the greatest salespeople are those that are carrying that commercial knowledge and able to have that more commercial conversation. But there's still plenty of business out there. There's still lots of deals being done. There's still, there's money out there to be had. And the companies that have run really good, solid businesses, and in the SaaS space in particular, companies that have run a revenue growth motion, but not at all costs, are the companies that are succeeding now. So what we've seen is organizations who were flashing flashing their card around for the last 3-5 years and go, look, we have got a headcount growth of 50 people and a revenue growth of X. Yeah, that's great. But how much did you spend to get it? I can drive a company up 10 million pounds in a year if I spend 100 million. Anyone can do that. The real people that are successful in business sustainably are people who can make money by spending less. And they're the companies who are doing really well right now. So yeah, lots of change. Loads of narrative around quality of salespeople, all that sort of stuff, if that's of interest too. But that's the landscape that I'm seeing right now.
And I think what you said there resonates with a lot of people is that we're seeing longer life cycles. We're seeing other additional stakeholders become involved who we may not have seen a year or 2 years ago. What would you say as an AE or somebody within that new business team? What can you do proactively to ensure that you can make this process as seamless as possible?
Yeah, so look, I think there's a couple of things that I advise to my team here. One is understand what it is like or what it means to be in procurement, to be in finance. Like, use your empathy skills, because I don't think we've had to do it much as salespeople over the last 3 to 5 years, until the last maybe 18 months. And I don't think people really understand why a finance person views it that way, why a procurement person comes in, what it is to be a CEO in this market when your runways, but you've got to lengthen your runway to 2 years instead of 1 year, which means you can't spend as much, but you still got to deliver a growth number. So I think educate yourself or find ways to educate yourself, and empathy are important. The thing that I think is generic advice in any circumstance, and the advice that I give to somebody managing a sales process, most likely in AE, is differentiate, stand out, do something that other people aren't doing. So I'll give you a really tangible example. We've got a deal in process right now, early stages, but we know they've gone out to a lot of agencies, a fairly big deal. We sent a proposal. Yeah, we've had a discovery call, we sent a proposal, but we've proactively tried to be fairly buyer-centric and say to them, look, what are the things that or say to ourselves, what are the things that they're going to want? What are the things that they're not telling us now that are going to help them? And they might not be able to identify it yet. So 2 things we've done off the back of that, early stages that we wouldn't normally do at this stage. One is we've proactively gone to them and said, we recommend that there are 4 people in the business that you should meet now. You might not buy from us, that's fine, but they will be the people that you'll likely be working most closely with. And that might be in 6 months' time, but we'd like you to meet them. Now, selfishly, we're doing that because it takes time, it's an investment, because we know that will help us the buy-in to those people. We're doing that much earlier in the process, but we know that competitors won't be doing that because it's an investment of time. You've got to organise everybody, and it's probably the wrong time historically to have done that. Secondly, we've got a number of our team to record short videos that we bundled in, the marketing team bundled into a little show reel, and talking about why we want to work with them, relevant experience, things that we've done, some case studies and results that's unique to them. Didn't take a huge amount of time. We do it on our phone, it's raw, and then we type it together with the marketing team. And we've done that after the proposal. So we're showing businesses that we want to work with you, that we're prepared to put the work in, and that we're creative, we're standing out. Yeah. And it's that kind of stuff. Are they brilliant examples? Maybe not. I don't know if they're examples, but it's that kind of stuff that will make buyers go, you know what? I like these guys. They really want our business. Where a company has demonstrated that they can give us a proposal and had an hour-long discovery, we've had 2 or 3 hours with them. Plus, they've given us all this creative content, and it's not boring slides. It's not reams and reams of copy over email. It's stuff that I can consume and enjoy consuming. And I'm starting to get to know these people as people. And I think that sort of stuff for me, anything you can do to differentiate, but not in a cheesy way, not in a stupid, but that actually opens the door and lets them see you in the business beyond the product. That's the stuff that I'm seeing really work.
Yeah, intentionally building those relationships, I think, is key. Do you see maybe within your client base or within your own team a pattern that separates the very good companies, those are staying on top of everything versus those that are actually very behind and struggling? Is there a specific approach or a specific methodology or specific tactics they use in order to be better?
Yeah, so I do think we're seeing Medic get adopted more and more now, partially because Medic as an organisation here in the UK have done an amazing job of building a brand around it, but also because at the moment there is a hell of a lot of time that could be wasted on deals that are not going to go anywhere, and you can predict it, not 100%, and I'm a big believer in flexibility in the sales process. So yes, Medic, yes, all these methodologies, great, but if you stick to it wholeheartedly and never move outside of it, my take is you are way too rigid, and the world doesn't work like that. That's just my personal opinion. But you can take bits from those methodologies and absolutely apply them. So what I do see is salespeople doing one of 2 things in companies that are failing. A, they're not following up, they're not working hard enough, they're not resistant enough in the sales process. They're giving up because somebody doesn't talk to them for 2 weeks and ghosts them, and they assume they don't want to buy. I can't tell you how many deals I've closed over the years that did that and then later bought from me because we didn't give up, because we just got creative in the way that we wanted to get in touch with them, or we were empathetic and went, it's obviously not important for them right now. It doesn't mean they don't like us. It doesn't mean they don't want to buy from us. It just means that today they're dealing with something that's probably more important to them. So let's keep making sure that they see us, that we're in front of them, that we're talking to them. Or the other way around is that they're chasing stuff that's just a waste of time, right? We've got so many people now that are making inquiries about things who don't have budget decision-making capability because that's been pushed up, right? So it used to be that a VP of sales could just spend money. Now the VP of sales needs to convince finance and the CEO, so they can't. but we've still got the same volume of opportunities coming in top of the funnel, potentially more because more organizations need help. So what we're seeing is this sort of steady flow of people saying yes that can't necessarily hit the pull the trigger by themselves because the landscape has changed, and salespeople just working so hard on this stuff and not being prepared to park it, walk away from it, qualify it out, push it forward 6 months, whatever. So lots of inefficiency in the sales process is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think you've said a couple of interesting things there. So, I'm a firm believer that if the opportunity is not qualified, you should qualify it out as soon as possible, because what you don't want is your reps or your AEs wasting time on deals that's definitely not going to be coming in. One of the things you said was that at times, an AE might give up. You go weeks and weeks without hearing from somebody. And that's quite interesting because it can be very demoralizing for AEs, right? It's a rejection-based role, and that's what we've signed up for, and we should, by the very nature of the role, be used to this. What would you say are good re-engagement tactics that you've seen your team deploy?
So I go back. So there's two things I would say in this moment. First, in terms of tactics, I go back to what I said before around creativity. So what I get, because I do it, right? I'm a buyer. I do it. I go quiet. Is it because I've made a decision and I'm just not telling you? No, because if you ask me and I've got the time, it's because I've got a to-do list of 20 things that I need to do today. I've got seven meetings back to back. I've got the same tomorrow. I've got staff that need me. I've got suppliers that need me to do something. I've got clients that are making noise and need support. And on my priority list, you're number 47, right? So that doesn't mean I hate you. Doesn't mean I don't want to talk to you. Doesn't mean I've said no. But in terms of where I am as a business, there's a process, and I'm never going to prioritize you unless it's a priority to me. And I think that the biggest thing that I say to people is, like, if you want to get up my priority list, you have to be noisy, right? But in the right way. So that's where that creativity tactics come in. So what can I do? I can, instead of, and this is the worst bit, are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? Via email, which is what you get. How about next day? Whatever. They're constantly asking, but no value. Be creative. Send me a video. Send me a voice note. Try a different channel. Try WhatsApp. Do something that you haven't done and that other salespeople aren't doing as much. Put something together creative and say, get to work with the marketing team and say, I've got this prospect, I really want them to buy for us. If we can get this deal over the line, I know on my discovery they gave all the right signs and they've gone quiet. They weren't lying, it's just their life has changed since that conversation, and you're not now in front of them. Find a way to earn the right to be in front of them. So I think that's point one. Point two is, it goes back to my point around empathy. So all that stuff I've just said, most salespeople will say, oh, they're ghosting me. Of course they are. They're not ghosting. They don't wake up in the morning and go, do you know what? I'm going to ignore that Hitesh today. They're not thinking that way. It's the reality. Right? They've got 1,000 things to think about. They've probably got, in my case, I've got 3 kids. I'm trying to fit in a run every day. I'm running a business. I'm trying to grow a business. I've got 95, 96 staff that want something, and I'm trying to do all that stuff really well. So me buying from you, when we spoke, there's a pain there, and I know it's there, and it hasn't gone away necessarily, but it might take me time to get there. And I think the moment you start feeling aggrieved or that person owes you something is the moment you start to behave in a really desperate manner, and that's when I do decide not to buy from you. So get rid of your pride, get rid of your whatever it is, arrogance, and just have a bit of empathy for people and understand that we live in a real world, not in HubSpot or Salesforce.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that point around delivering value in between the lines is really important as well. Stay in front of mind, being creative about it. So I couldn't agree more.
And you speak a lot about being empathetic and understanding essentially emotions and where people are at. Is there, from your leadership experience viewpoint, is there a way you can detect that during the hiring process when you hire your own staff? Because that's really hard to gauge during a few minutes conversation.
Yeah, do you know the biggest problem? I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to answer it indirectly first, which is that most leaders don't have it. So the chances of them being able to identify that they even need that in a salesperson is pretty slim. The state of sales leadership generally is very poor right now, in my opinion, poorer than it's ever been. So most leaders won't be out there going, I need people with empathy. But I think the answer is yes. And I think there's a couple of things that you can do around the interview process and questions that you can ask around previous experience. Typically, if you're hiring people that have sold before, then previous experience where they've had to sell to somebody who's not their ICP, where they've had to sell to somebody who had to sell it internally for them. What did they do in that circumstance? Yeah, just try and get them into scenarios that they've been in and see how they approach that. So we've just talked about, I need empathy in the situation where I'm having to deal with people in different roles for the role that I do. So if I'm selling into sales, great, I'll know what salesperson does, that's my job. But if suddenly the decision maker becomes marketing or finance, do I take the time to go and work out what it's like to be a HR or a finance person or marketing person or whatever it might be? So I think you can ask those questions around, give me a time when you got ghosted. How did you deal with that? What did you do? You know, did you win the deal? Did you not? It's not about the outcome. It's actually about the process in there. Give me a time where somebody let you down at the last minute. You thought the deal was going to come over the line. They hadn't told you there was a stakeholder involved or whatever. Something where a deal changed overnight. How did you feel? What did you do about it? How did you respond? You know, let's see, because if somebody says, really pissed me off and I had to go, fine, they're unlikely to say that in an interview, granted. But if they said, do you know what? If their answer was, take it on the chin, that's life. Here are the things that I learned that I could have done differently. And what I actually did was phone and ask for feedback. Oh, that's what you want right now. Okay, most people aren't going to say that as well. But, I think questions like that, when we dig into real experience, and you and I are smart enough in theory to tell the difference between a lie in an interview and somebody who's telling a genuine story. I think generally you should be able to tell the difference, and they should be able to put on so many stories like that. So if they can't, you've got to question whether they're they're experienced enough in the first place.
Yeah, I like that point about asking for feedback as well. It's very rare where, I've been trying to buy a tool and then, having evaluated a number of options, and the people I didn't choose actually asked me for feedback as to why I didn't do it. How often do you see that happening? And somebody who I assume has purchased a lot of tools to run the companies that you do, how often do you see people asking for feedback, and in the event that they're not, why do you think they're not?
Not often enough, definitely. It does happen, and I think more and more. So there were two scenarios where I have had it. One is people making cold calls to me and actually saying to me, I think probably because they identify that that's a topic of passion and that I create a lot of content on, they'll say to me at the end of the call, how do I do? Can you give me some feedback? Or they'll email me afterwards. And that's happening more and more now, and I do like that. Yeah. And I've had it probably 2 or 3 times in the last, couple of years, where a rep has done that. We've lost the deal. They've specifically said, please can I have some really valuable feedback? Where I see that strategy working really well is where you swap close lost deals with other reps. So we call it sweeper tactic, where Hitesh loses a deal. That's fine, it happens. But what Hitesh is never going to say is, I stuffed up, or I didn't do a great job with that deal. They didn't buy because of me. But there is a chance, let's face it, that Hitesh just didn't connect with you, right? Not everybody connects with everybody the right way. Maybe didn't do a great job of communicating the value prop. Maybe you just missed a point, didn't handle a couple of objections as well as you would liked. So Mick gets on the phone. That deal goes to Mick. Mick gets on the phone and says, look, understand we spoke to you recently. Understand you chose to go with somebody else. That's brilliant. No problem. My call isn't to move things forwards whatsoever. Just wanted to get some feedback. We take our processes really importantly, and our client experience really importantly. Whether it's whether you think of buying for us or you are a customer, love for you to just give me 3 bits of feedback. What could we have done better in the process? What can we learn from this? And you know what? It's brilliant. It's not the same person, so it's not about Hitesh. So they'll open up more, right? Rather than saying, oh, yeah, no, it just wasn't right timing. They'll say, do you know what? We asked this question to Hitesh. It just didn't give us the right answer to it. And it didn't feel like he was as compelling as the other people we're talking to. And it might not be that, but you open the door to that possibility. And a percentage of those conversations will say, well, look, actually, we didn't buy from somebody else. We just weren't convinced you guys were right. We're still buying. Well, Mick has the opportunity to then reopen that deal. But you could get such valuable feedback from that process. So your worst case scenario is you learn something and you get better. Your best case scenario is, and I see this happen, it reopens the deal. It reopens the deal in a different way with a different salesperson. And actually, they respect you for having done it. So yeah, there's so much value to come from doing that. But I would always recommend that it's not the person that managed the deal first time round, and that it's somebody else in the team.
That's a great tactic. Yeah, I've never thought about that, getting somebody else to do it. That's amazing, yeah.
So I can't claim credit. So I learned that from Tim Johnson at Visualsoft, who was a client of ours who runs that internally. So we've done bits of the feedback bit, absolutely, but I'd never considered how that opens doors if you do it with a different rep. So as always, plagiarizing my way through my career.
Well, there you go. And now I'll claim that plagiarism from you as well. So there you go. The cycle continues.
Indeed. And look, one of the best phrases is, look, start the call by saying, just so you know, I'm not looking to move this forward. It's one of the best phrases because it just diffuses the pressure immediately and allows you to go and have a really open conversation because the guard comes down.
Yeah, I'm actually jotting that down.
Yeah, me too. It's part of our review process now. Owen, there's a lot of conversations around, prospection versus conversion. What do you need to do today in order to win the prospecting game?
Yeah, look, good question. So my first thing is do not hide behind email. So the reps and organizations that are failing the most are the ones that are hiding behind digital in isolation. So they're hiding behind emails because it's comfortable. Their reps aren't being exposed to having human conversation early. So their negotiation skills, their communication skills, their ability to have a conversation with somebody are just nowhere near where they should be. And the culture becomes laziness, becomes hiding from things, becomes about accepting. So, I'm a huge fan of the phone. Anyone who knows me will know I'm a huge fan of the phone. Not the phone in isolation. What will never say is the only thing you should use the phone. What I'm saying is that it is your primary tool. And the greatest thing about the phone is that if I get a no, I know why. I get feedback. I get the chance to do something about it. Whereas if someone says no to an email, guess what they do? They delete it, and you never know about it. So you know nothing about why. You know nothing about what you should or could do next. So we keep blindly sending emails. I've seen organizations who are running prospecting operations, SDR teams, have got a KPI of 30 emails a day. And they're doing this lovely stuff where they're saying to their 21-year-old SDRs, go be creative, go come up with these really cheesy gifts and all this stuff that's going to make people, guys, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So every so often it does. But, the sales hasn't changed in the people still buy from having a conversation with somebody they like, they get along with, that they learn to trust in that conversation, that negotiates with them, that convinces them to some degree. And we just need to be doing that more. So I think we've moved from, I'm not a believer in it's a pure numbers game at all, but it is a numbers game. Right, it absolutely is. The more of something you do, that doesn't negate the better you do it, but the more you do, if you do something at this level today and you do it 5 times more, you're probably going to get 5 times the outcome. Now you might not be able to do it 5 times more without reducing quality, and that's a consideration. But we definitely need to be pushing reps to get on the phone more, have more conversations, and to be considering the fact that activity creates an audience, it creates things. So one of my favorite phrases is shake the tree and something will fall out. If you're making calls, if you're working hard, if you're doing stuff, something will fall out and you get luck. And that's what you need as a salesperson. So I think it's about good technology, but not overcomplicating it. So I've seen SDR orgs that have got 12 pieces of technology in their tech stack and you just think, oh my God, the reps aren't ramping in 3 months. Well, why do you think? They're going to learn so much. And then these toxic cultures that are just built around people hiding behind their own lives of creative emailing and that sort of stuff. Like, you've got to be creative, you've got to email, but ultimately you need activity and you need human conversation. And then my final point is creativity is like do differentiation, do something different. If you receive a cold call and you say the same thing as everybody else, so then the years gone by, it was how are you? Now this is a cold call. Can I have 30 seconds of time, or do you want to put the phone down on me now? Whatever this phrase is, and I get it, and it just makes me cringe. Not because it doesn't work. A percentage of the time, those things work, right? Everything works a percentage of the time, but it's the same thing everyone else is doing now. And every new pattern interrupt becomes normal after a period of time. So you've got to do it your way. You've got to do it in a way that makes you stand out and makes you credible. And again, using those empathy skills. What would you want to hear if you're a CEO? What would you want to hear if you're a finance director or whoever it is that you're selling to?
Yeah, that makes sense. And while we're speaking about SDRs, there's obviously a lot of talk about the introduction of AI in specific to this role as well. What are your views on that? How much do you think it should be leveraged? How much should it be taken away from manpower essentially behind the role?
Yeah, so look, it's a hot debate, isn't it? And I will confess, I am not an AI expert whatsoever. So my opinion is my opinion and not much more than that. My take on it is that the whole time that human beings are the people that make the decision to buy, and the whole time that human beings buy with emotion as part of that decision-making blend, which we do, it will take humans in the sales process to sell it, right? Now, leveraging AI in that process makes a lot of sense. If it can make us more efficient, more effective, absolutely. But using AI to do the job is not going to happen in the next 10 years to 15 years, in my opinion. Now, it will in certain industries, right? So if your transactional sales process, if you're low sales value, if you're consumer based, if you want to automate your sales, absolutely. But if you're selling any reasonable sales, sales value, and there's any complexities in your product or service, I think it'd be very, very difficult to do that. And what you've got to remember is that we can all automate everything, right? And we could all send 1,000 emails a day, 1,000 LinkedIn messages, and we'd win sales. We'd win sales. But buyers, if everybody did that, buyers would become numb to it and we wouldn't buy. We'd stop buying and we'd just reverse cycle back to, actually, I just want to talk to someone because I don't trust any of this stuff. So as with anything, it's a blend. Should we be looking at AI, learning how it can help us in the sales process, and learning how it can help us from a content perspective and a brand perspective? Absolutely. Is it something to ignore? No. Is it something to double down on and stop hiring great salespeople and stop investing in your people? No, we're a million miles away from that, in my opinion.
I agree. I think it's very much of an enabler, and it's very convenient, but it can't be your whole strategy. It can't be taken.
You go back to sales enablement, sales engagement. 10 years ago didn't exist. And nobody brought in a sales loft or outreach and went, cool, I'll stop hiring salespeople because it can automate emails. Like, it needed somebody to do the thinking behind that. And it's that empathy piece we keep talking about. You can't, AI is not going to be there anytime soon in a way that makes me feel special when I'm going to spend 100 grand on something. Because if I'm going to spend 100 grand with you, guess what? I want to feel special. I want to feel like it's important. I want to feel like emotionally we're connected. I want to feel like you care about that in the way that I do because it's important to me. And I want to trust you. I'm sorry, but I don't trust a robot yet. I'm not going to be there for a long, long time.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. There's something you said during the conversation around the state of the quality of sales leadership, which I completely agree with you. I feel like there are a lot of people doing the job they're doing without knowing anything about it. And often one thing that I find wrong is you got your top performer and then you're going to give them this person like team management responsibilities that they've never managed before. They're just good at what they are doing, but for some reason they need to be also good at managing people. Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's a poor quality at that leadership level?
A couple of reasons. I think you hit the nail on the head there, but I think that's been in play forever, right? That's not a new thing. But what you've got to think about is that, particularly in the way that SaaS has changed or has become a thing and has changed, the blend of organizations pre-technology era was, think even a printing company or a manufacturing company. Here's the operation and here's the sales team that just sits on the side. It's a tiny sales team, 4 or 5 people in it, we go to sell, right? Whereas a SaaS organization, here's the product team and here's the sales team. Because what happened is that the economy found a way to invest in a market that multiplied valuations of companies based on future earning potential, based on recurring income, all this sort of stuff. So it changed the way that businesses were structured. And as a result, sales teams became your biggest operation. So you see people, go back to my point earlier, I've listened to a talk with somebody, a company that went Series A, Series B, Series C in the space of 11 months. And they start a year and they go, we've got to hire 80 SDRs this year. That's the headcount growth target because our whatever. And you think you can't do that effectively. Like, it's impossible to hire that many people and to get it anywhere near right? So you are absolutely accepting inefficiencies, poor standards, poor levels. And what that's done is it's just changed the way that we think about sales. So more and more people have come into sales. They've done well because they're naturally good communicators. They can sell, they're empathetic, whatever, probably without training. And then they become leaders. And if you look at the average age of a sales leader, they're now probably 10 years, 20 years younger than they were a decade ago on average, because they want to progress fast. And we've got a generation that wants to progress fast. And we've got a sector that needs to progress people fast because it's growing so quickly. And it causes all sorts of issues. So yeah, look, I think what we've seen is people move into sales leadership way before they should have done, because they're good at the thing before, or because the organizational structure means they need more leaders. So it's the lesser of two evils to move people up. A generational expectation to move as quickly as possible. And these things just blend with each other and cause a problem. And then a lack of investment in people, because people aren't staying in the same organization. You know, it used to be that we could work for an organization in our city where we live, but now we can work for an organization anywhere in the world, which means we move more, which means that companies invest less in people because it's expensive to invest. And we know that they're only likely to stay for 14 months. So that investment won't benefit us, it will benefit somebody else. So there's a lot of work to be done around it, a hell of a lot of work to be done. I don't have the answers, I just want to whinge about it, I think.
No, yeah, I think you've made some interesting points there. So, you know, I've seen VP of sales and CROs move their top performers in to management positions, and the logic behind it typically is, look, like if I put somebody else in above them and they're the top performer and they have been for this period of time, you know, they're not going to be very happy about it and they're just going to move on. So, I mean, what advice would you give to a leader who's in this position? You know, I've seen it many times before, and it is, you know, I've seen it where you don't give them the offer and you hire externally and you hire someone with experience. And what happens more often than not is that top performer then says, well, I've been overlooked over here. They become disgruntled and they attempt to leave or do leave. So, I mean, what would your advice be? Is it let it go? Is it, you know, how do you approach that situation?
So look, I think like anything, it comes down to good communication, right? So you can manage that if you have a good relationship with that person. You can communicate. You got to sell it to them. You got to sell why you're making that decision. But ultimately, as a leader, you have the responsibility to make the best decision for a company. There won't be a perfect decision, right? It's impossible for there to be a perfect decision. So you've got to compromise either way. I either hire somebody externally who can show and demonstrate they've got experience. Now there's a risk to that because I don't know them. Do they fit culturally? All that kind of stuff. But in theory, I should have a process that's pretty good and do good due diligence. And in doing that, I risk upsetting that person or multiple people. Bear in mind, it's never one, so you're always upsetting someone, whatever you do. Or I hire this person who's not ready to lead us forwards because I don't want to lose them. Look, even saying it out loud there, it seems a bit silly, doesn't it? Because it's like, well, there's an obvious choice. But the key is the way you execute that. So for me, I would never... You know, I think there's two options. You take the one that feels like the lesser compromise, and it might be that person's only 10% off. So how can I plug that gap? How can I advance their learnings? It might be that they're a million miles away, but you don't want to lose them. That's where you've got to manage it. And actually, people will respect you. The business will do better, and people will respect you for making the right decision if you execute it well. So if I, if I were to bring Mick in over your head, Hitesh, and say, look, this is why I'm doing it. I understand empathy again. I understand that's going to make you feel this way. And I understand that you're probably going to start looking for another job. Here's my plan for you. Here's where I want to take you. Here is why I think this is the right thing for you as well. Because if I put you into the seat and you fail, it's going to be really hard. You're going to leave anyway. So we end up with the same outcome. If I give you the seat next time, you've got somebody brilliant to learn from, who's been there, who's done it. You get another 6-12 months to learn from. There are 2 opportunities coming up in the business in the future that I can see are viable for you. You take a stepping stone opportunity instead of a massive jump in one go. And in 3 years' time, that would have been the right thing for you. And I'm thinking long term, how do we get you to be the most successful you can be? Now, none of those things may be spot on. It's an example. But if I can explain that to somebody, he or she is going to go away and go, you know, there's logic to that argument. I might still feel a bit grieved, but I'm just going to sit for a minute and see what this new person is like. And if that person is good and you've hired well, guess what? They're going to respond to that and go, you know what, I've got somebody great to learn from. This person's actually coaching me, developing me, and I'm learning loads from them, getting better. They're not going to leave, or they're less likely to leave. So I think, like anything, there's no right or wrong in business ever around this stuff, unless it's ethical stuff. But there's a way to execute it that gives you a better chance of a positive outcome.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a great answer. I think I agree with that as well. So I think we are a little bit overrunning on time. So I appreciate you staying on. I guess like one final question to wrap up would be, you know, someone who's vastly experienced, what would be your greatest memory as a leader or throughout your career? Like what's the greatest memory you have and why?
Oh, that's a good question. So greatest individual memory. So look, I think the first £1 million deal we signed was without a doubt. You can't not celebrate that and think about those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I think probably that's the traditional answer. It is the first time you sign a deal of that sort of size is a pretty special feeling. However, the way that I'm wired as a human is that I tend to connect to the more interpersonal things. Signing a contract is lovely, money's lovely, but I'm not necessarily driven by that stuff. I'm driven by connections with people, relationships, those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. So I think that the bit that I sort of take the pride out of is seeing people in our organization who, so for example, there's a guy in our organization called Marco, who's our head of sales, started in the business as an SDR. 21 years old, he's 7 years later now, so you can do the maths. Head of sales, got a team, brings in multiple £1 million through his team of revenue every year. Seeing his career progress, seeing him buy two houses, moving towards, no doubt, marriage, kids, family, all that kind of stuff. That's the stuff that sits with you when you go home at night and have a beer or chat with family, whatever. The stuff that actually, it's not necessarily a memory, but if I think about starting the business and those people joining and transition through the company, those are the things that sit most dear to me, I think.
Amazing. Great answer. Well, look, this has been the Revenue Revolution podcast, and we appreciate you being a guest. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Owen.
Cheers.
See you later. Bye.